The world ended not with a bang, nor a cataclysmic roar, but with a whisper of static, then a scream that tore through the airwaves. It wasn't the kind of scream heard in theatrical horror films, drawn out for dramatic effect. This was raw, visceral terror, abruptly cut short, leaving an echoing, hollow void. The silence that followed was a physical entity pressing down. Elara dropped her antique porcelain teacup, a delicate heirloom, watching it shatter into 1,000 glittering fragments on the polished mahogany floor. Each shard reflected the strange new light of the afternoon. The sudden, absolute silence that engulfed her was infinitely more terrifying than the ear-splitting shriek had been, a vacuum where life once pulsed. Outside, the meticulously manicured garden, usually a vibrant symphony of rustling leaves and distant birdsong, lay unnaturally, terrifyingly still. Not a single breeze stirred the delicate rose bushes. Not a sparrow dared to chirp from its hidden nest. The afternoon sun, typically a comforting golden hue, now cast an ominous blood-orange glow, painting the familiar landscape in alien hues of dread. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage, desperate for escape. Her breath caught in her throat, a knot of icy fear forming deep in her stomach. What grotesque, unimaginable event had just unfolded, ripping away the very fabric of her existence? One moment, she had been enjoying her customary afternoon tea, the gentle, predictable hum of the city a familiar backdrop. The next, the entire framework of reality seemed to have violently ripped open, exposing something dark, cold, and utterly unfathomable beneath. She stumbled towards the large bay window, her silk dressing gown swishing around her ankles. Her fingers, usually steady from years of delicate embroidery work, trembled uncontrollably as they pushed aside the heavy velvet curtains, revealing the stark truth beyond. The street below was deserted. Utterly, unnervingly empty. Cars were parked haphazardly along the curbs, some with their doors ajar, others with bags of groceries spilled onto the pavement like forgotten offerings. A child's bright red tricycle lay abandoned on its side near a lamppost, its small wheels still spinning slowly in the profound quiet, a ghostly echo of innocent play. Her gaze swept upwards, desperately searching the vast, indifferent expanse of the sky. No planes streaked across the azure, no distant contrails hinted at human activity. Just an expanse of unsettlingly clear blue, tinged with that strange, fiery orange, stretching endlessly above. It felt as though the very air had thickened, grown heavy with an unseen, malevolent presence. A distant siren, wailing once, twice, a mournful, drawn-out cry, then fading into absolute nothingness, sent a fresh, sickening wave of panic through her. It wasn't a familiar police siren, nor the urgent shriek of an ambulance. It was deeper, more resonant, a sound that spoke of warning, of profound, uncontainable distress, of final lament. She needed to find Leo. He was at work downtown, amidst the towering skyscrapers and endless streams of people. The thought of him alone in that potential chaos twisted her insides into a painful, agonizing knot. Reaching for her phone, her fingers fumbled, slick with nervous sweat. Her grip was weak, almost useless. No signal. Not even a faint flicker of service bars, a single sliver of digital hope. Just a stark, mocking, no-service message emblazoned across the screen, a chilling, digital death sentence. Her antique wall clock, a cherished family heirloom, chimed 3 times, its melodious tone unnervingly loud, a stark punctuation mark in the profound silence. 3 o'clock. Barely an hour ago, life had been gloriously, mundanely normal. Now, normal was a concept utterly alien, a forgotten language from a distant, peaceful past.
She felt a profound chill seep into her very bones, a cold that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. It was the chill of absolute dread, of impending doom. Her mind raced, frantically trying to construct a logical framework for the sudden, devastating quiet. Was it a massive electrical blackout? A colossal EMP pulse wiping out all electronics? But the lights in her living room were still on. The refrigerator still hummed faintly in the kitchen, a solitary, fragile sound breaking the oppressive stillness. It was something else entirely, she realized with a sickening lurch, something far more insidious, far more final. The sheer instantaneousness of it, the way the world had simply stopped in mid-breath, was what truly terrified her, leaving her utterly exposed and vulnerable. She remembered news reports from months ago, whispers of strange atmospheric phenomena, unusual solar flares, and inexplicable deep-sea anomalies. Dismissed as the ravings of fringe scientists, those discarded warnings now echoed in her mind with terrifying, undeniable clarity, like prophecies come true. Suddenly, a faint scratching sound came from the front door. Not a gentle tap, not a frantic banging, but a soft, insistent scrape, like rough, unyielding fingernails dragging across weathered oak wood. Elara froze, her breath held captive in her chest, every muscle in her body instantly tensed. Her senses went on high alert, every nerve screaming. Her eyes darted towards the sound, her heart threatening to claw its way out of her throat. She hadn't locked the door. She rarely did, living in such a quiet, secluded, and seemingly safe neighborhood. A catastrophic oversight, she realized with a sickening jolt. A truly fatal mistake in this newly terrifying world where safety was a myth. The scratching grew louder, more deliberate, punctuated by a soft, guttural moan that seemed to emanate from just beyond the heavy oak paneling. It was not a human sound, not entirely. It was something distorted, broken, a sound of agony and hunger. A primal fear, ancient and overwhelming, seized her with an icy grip. It wasn't just the silence, the emptiness, or the terrifying unknown anymore. It was them. Whatever they were here, at her door, waiting, breathing, hungry. Her gaze fell upon a heavy brass letter opener on her ornate writing desk, its polished blade glinting ominously in the strange, blood-orange afternoon light. A futile weapon, perhaps, against whatever monstrosity lurked outside, but it was something, a tangible resistance. With trembling, almost numb hands, she snatched it up, its cold, solid weight a small, desperate comfort against the encroaching terror. Her gaze fixed on the front door, a barrier now thin as tissue paper against the relentless, suffocating dread. The scratching paused for a bit, an agonizing moment of stillness, then resumed with renewed vigor, accompanied by a faint, heavy thud, as if something substantial had slumped against the wood, pushing inward. The groan intensified, becoming a low, rasping sound that vibrated through the floorboards, through her very soul, promising inevitable horror. She took a step back, then another, her mind screaming for escape, for flight. But where could she go? The garden was equally exposed. The large bay windows offered no real protection. Her once safe home, her sanctuary, had become a flimsy, transparent cage. The doorknob slowly, agonizingly began to turn, its metallic click echoing like a gunshot in the profound, new silence of the dying world.
The doorknob clicked, a sound that resonated with the finality of a death knell, and the heavy oak door slowly, inexorably, began to swing inward, groaning in protest as if sharing Elara's abject horror. A sliver of shadow, impossibly deep and devoid of any discernible form, stretched across her polished floor, an advance guard of the nightmare. Elara gasped, a ragged, strangled sound torn from her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to retreat into the depths of her house, to hide. But a terrifying paralysis held her rooted to the spot, a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming, unstoppable force. The letter opener felt laughably inadequate, a child's toy against a titan. A stench, cloying and sickening, assaulted her nostrils, a miasma of damp earth, decaying flesh, and something sharply metallic, like spilled blood. It was a smell that spoke of the grave, of things long dead, yet disturbingly, horrifyingly alive. Then she saw it. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. A hand, grotesquely elongated, tipped with nails like tarnished, yellowed claws, clamped onto the edge of the doorframe. The skin was mottled, discolored, appearing almost bark-like in places, stretched taut over bony protrusions. It was not human. It was not animal in any familiar sense. A low growl, more rumble than sound, vibrated through the floorboards, a hungry, predatory sound that promised unspeakable violence. The air in the hallway suddenly grew heavy, oppressive, as if all warmth and light were being siphoned away by the entity beyond. Elara found her voice then, a strangled shriek that tore through the eerie silence of the house, a desperate, futile cry for help in a world where help no longer existed. It was a sound born of pure, unadulterated terror. She lunged forward, fueled by a surge of adrenaline, not to attack, but to slam the door shut, to buy herself a few precious, fleeting seconds. With all her strength, she threw her weight against the heavy oak, pushing back against the unseen force on the other side. The creature let out another guttural moan, a sound of frustration and raw power, as the door momentarily stalled. Elara could feel the immense pressure against the wood, the creaking of the hinges, the subtle vibration of its strength attempting to breach her last bastion of safety. She pressed harder, her muscles screaming in protest, her vision blurring at the edges. The letter opener, still clutched in her hand, became a mere extension of her desperation. If it came to it, she knew it wouldn't be enough. Nothing would be enough. A faint, sickly green light seemed to emanate from beyond the door, casting grotesque, shifting shadows across the hallway floor. It pulsed faintly, like a dying ember, revealing glints of something wet and slick on the creature's gnarled skin. Với một cú rô xén, nhất tiết shove, a surge of adrenaline granting her impossible strength, the door slammed shut với một resounding thud that echoed through the silent house. The latch clicked into place, a meager, fragile barrier against the monstrous unknown. Elara leaned against the door, panting, her chest heaving, listening intently. For a moment, there was only silence, thick và suffocating. Her heart thundered in her ears, a drumbeat of panic. Had she won? Had it retreated? Then the scratching resumed, more furious this time, accompanied by a heavy, rhythmic thudding against the wood. It sounded like a massive weight repeatedly slamming into the door, each impact reverberating through her very bones, threatening to splinter the old oak into kindling. She scrambled backward, stumbling over her own feet, collapsing onto the Persian rug in the living room. Her eyes were wide, darting frantically around the once comforting space, now a terrifyingly exposed stage for her impending doom. Where could she go? The back door? The windows? But what if there were more of them? What if the entire world outside was teeming with these things, these silent, hungry monstrosities that had arrived with the blood-orange sun? The thought of Leo, alone, potentially facing this horror, clawed at her heart. Was he fighting? Was he already gone? The possibility was a crushing weight, heavier than any physical blow. She couldn't abandon hope for him, not yet. The thudding continued, relentless, methodical, punctuated by those chilling, guttural moans. Each impact was a countdown, a hammer blow striking against the fortress of her sanity. She had to think, to move, to do something. Her gaze fell upon the grand fireplace, its heavy iron grate, the thick marble mantel. Not a weapon, but a place of concealment, perhaps. A temporary reprieve, a breath of time to formulate a plan, however desperate. She crawled towards it, her movements clumsy, her body feeling leaden with fear. The scratching and thudding intensified, accompanied by a new sound, a splintering, cracking noise, unmistakable and terrifyingly close. The door was giving way. There was no time for hesitation. This was not a nightmare from which she could simply wake. This was her reality now, a brutal, unforgiving awakening into a world she no longer recognized. Her survival, however improbable, depended on her next move. The door gave way with a sickening, final shriek of tortured wood and metal. Not a slow, agonizing splinter, but a sudden, violent eruption. The massive oak panel exploded inward, torn from its hinges, fragments of timber showering the hallway floor. In its wake stood the creature, a hulking, shadowed form framed against the blood-orange sky. Its presence a gaping, festering wound in the very fabric of reality. Elara, pressed against the cold marble of the fireplace, instinctively clapped a hand over her mouth, stifling a scream that threatened to tear her throat. Her heart thundered a frantic, deafening rhythm against her ribs. The creature was even more grotesque than her brief glimpse had suggested. Its skin, where visible through tattered, mud-stained clothes, was a mottled tapestry of decay and unnatural growth, its limbs elongated and twisted at impossible angles. Its head, if it could be called that, was a malformed parody of humanity, eyes sunken and devoid of light, yet fixed with an undeniable, predatory intelligence. A low, wet growl vibrated in its throat, a sound of primal hunger and malevolence that sent a torrent of icy fear coursing through her veins, freezing her to the spot. It took a shambling, uneven step into the living room, its heavy footfalls shaking the very floorboards. The stench intensified, a pungent, unbearable cocktail of death and something alien. Its gaze swept the room, a slow, methodical scan, searching. Elara squeezed her eyes shut, trying to disappear into the shadows of the hearth, willing herself invisible, utterly silent. A faint clink, the sound of her porcelain teacup shattering earlier, drew its attention. The creature paused, its head tilting at an unnerving angle, its form momentarily still. It lumbered towards the scattered fragments, a gnarled, clawed hand slowly reaching down, picking up a shard. It held the glittering piece to its sightless eyes, a faint, rasping sound escaping its throat, a grotesque semblance of curiosity. This momentary distraction was her only chance. Elara's mind, despite the paralyzing terror, clicked into a desperate, primal mode. Her grand, rambling house had a forgotten service entrance, a small, unassuming door in the utility room off the kitchen, rarely used, overgrown with ivy. It was her one desperate hope for escape. With agonizing slowness, each muscle screaming in protest, she butt-dunked to inch away from the fireplace, retreating further into the shadow. The creature was still drenched with the teacup shard, its back partially turned. Her movements were careful, deliberate, each breath held until her lungs burned. She moved like a phantom, her silk gown making no sound against the polished floor, towards the archway leading to the kitchen. The air grew heavier with each step, the creature's presence a suffocating weight. She could feel its raw, malevolent energy, a silent hum that vibrated in the air around it. Reaching the kitchen archway, she darted through, not daring to look back, praying the creature had not noticed her subtle movement. The kitchen, usually bright and cheerful, was now a cavern of shadows, the strange blood-orange light filtering through the window, painting everything in unsettling hues. Her trembling fingers fumbled for the light switch, finding only cold plastic. The power was out in this section of the house, or perhaps the creature's presence warped something, draining the light. No matter. She knew this kitchen intimately, every nook and cranny, every hidden corner. She moved with renewed urgency, navigating the familiar space by instinct, towards the small, unassuming door tucked away near the pantry. It was old, painted a dull gray, and rarely opened. A heavy iron bolt secured it from the inside. Her hands, slick with sweat, struggled with the cold metal, fumbling with the stiff bolt. It resisted, groaning slightly, as if reluctant to surrender its secret. Behind her, from the living room, came a sudden, sharp crash. The creature had dropped the teacup shard, perhaps realizing its empty victory, or sensing her absence. A low, enraged bellow erupted, a sound that curdled her blood and propelled her into a frenzy of desperate action. It knew. It was coming. With a final, desperate grunt, she wrenched the bolt free. It slid back with a grating screech that seemed impossibly loud in the dead silence. She pulled the door open, revealing a narrow, overgrown pathway leading to the side gate. The air outside was cold, crisp, and blessedly free of the creature's stench. She burst out into the late afternoon, gulping down lungfuls of fresh, albeit strangely ominous air. The sky overhead was a breathtaking, terrifying canvas of fiery oranges and deep purples, utterly devoid of clouds, a silent, beautiful apocalypse. She didn't look back. There was no time. Her heart screamed a desperate mantra, "Leo, find Leo!" The thought of him, alone in the chaotic city, was a burning ember of hope and terror. She had to reach him. The street, still eerily deserted, stretched before her like a forgotten pathway into a forgotten dimension. The abandoned tricycle, the spilled groceries, the open car doors, silent, macabre monuments to a world that had vanished in a blink. As she reached the broken side gate, she risked a glance down the street. In the distance, silhouetted against the deepening, unnatural twilight, she saw another figure. It was tall, shambling, its movements jerky and unnatural. It was turning, slowly, towards her, its vacant gaze sweeping the desolate street. There were more of them, many more. A cold certainty settled in her heart. She was utterly alone in this new, brutal world. But the desperation to find Leo, to confirm his fate, fueled a new, fierce resolve. She would not simply hide. She would not simply succumb. She would move. She would fight, driven by the desperate hope that somewhere in this silent, terrifying new reality, he was still waiting. Ilara ran, the blood-orange sky painting the desolation in hues of apocalyptic beauty. The shambling figure she had seen in the distance was slow, clumsy, but undeniably heading her way. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, urging her forward, away from the monstrosities that now claimed her once safe street. She ducked into an alleyway, a narrow cut between two silent, abandoned houses, overgrown with weeds and shadows. The air grew colder here, the oppressive silence even more profound. She could hear her own ragged breathing, the frantic thrumming of her blood, the only sounds in a world suddenly devoid of life's familiar symphony. Emerging onto a main thoroughfare, the scene was even more chilling. Cars stood gridlocked, their doors flung open, some with keys still dangling in the ignitions. Groceries lay scattered across the asphalt, alongside dropped handbags, forgotten briefcases, even a child's brightly colored toy train, its tiny wheels still slightly askew. It was a snapshot of a moment, frozen in time, when humanity had simply vanished.
The monstrous figures, these things, were now visible in scattered clusters, moving with a horrifying, aimless purpose. They stalked the deserted streets, their grotesque forms silhouetted against the burning sky, their low moans the only soundtrack to this macabre tableau. They were drawn to sounds, she realized, to movement, a terrifying echo of their predatory instincts. She moved with an almost supernatural stealth, hugging the shadows of buildings, darting between parked vehicles, her silk dressing gown a fragile, almost mocking garment of a bygone era. Each rustle of fabric, each misplaced step on a loose pebble felt like a thunderclap, threatening to betray her presence to the silent hunters. Her journey across the now dead city was a gauntlet of fear and physical exertion. Hours blurred into a relentless pursuit of escape and hope. The sun began its slow, agonizing descent, painting the sky in ever-deepening shades of crimson and violet, making the shadows long and treacherous, perfect hiding places for unseen terrors. She had to cross a wide, deserted park, its usually vibrant green lawns now withered and brown in patches, the trees standing like skeletal sentinels. Halfway across, a shadow stirred from beneath a large oak tree. Another one. Its head, a misshapen horror, slowly turned, its empty sockets fixing on her. Panic flared, sharp and debilitating. She froze, utterly still, praying it hadn't seen her, praying it would dismiss her as just another part of the inanimate landscape. But it began to move, a slow, deliberate shuffle, its guttural groan echoing across the silent park. Ilara bolted. She ran with a strength she didn't know she possessed, her lungs burning, her legs aching, every fiber of her being screaming for survival. She didn't look back, she just ran, the sound of its shuffling footsteps a chilling drumbeat behind her, growing closer, closer. She burst out of the park, scrambling over a low stone wall, landing hard on the pavement of another street. The creature hesitated at the wall, its twisted limbs not quite capable of scaling it with ease. She had bought herself precious seconds, a sliver of reprieve. Her destination, Leo's office building, a towering glass and steel monolith, loomed in the distance, a beacon of desperate hope amidst the encroaching gloom. The thought of him, a comforting anchor in her mind, was the only thing that kept her moving, pushing through the pain and the pervasive, soul-crushing fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she stood before the grand, revolving doors of his corporate building. They were still, inert, reflecting the dying light of the afternoon like giant, blind eyes.
The lobby, usually bustling with security guards and brisk professionals, was dark, silent, and terrifyingly empty. She forced her way through the emergency exit beside the revolving doors, the clang of the metal echoing loudly in the cavernous space. The air inside was stale, metallic, and cold. The elevators were dead, their indicator lights dark. She had to take the stairs. 27 floors. Each step was a monumental effort, her legs trembling, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The silence in the stairwell was oppressive, broken only by her own labored breathing and the frantic thumping of her heart. On the 12th floor, she saw a dark, wet stain on the concrete. She didn't stop, didn't dare to look too closely, just pushed on, her resolve hardening. Finally, she reached the 27th floor, Leo's floor. The office was eerily quiet, the cubicles standing like tombs, computer screens dark, chairs askew. His office, a corner suite with panoramic views, stood open, a dark rectangle against the last vestige of the blood-orange sunset. She crept inside, her senses on high alert. No sound, no movement, just the chilling, profound silence. His desk was neat, a half-finished cup of coffee still on a coaster, a pen resting on an open legal pad. A photograph of them both, laughing, stood proudly on the corner. And then she saw it. On his desk, beneath the photo, a single folded piece of paper. Her name, Ilara, scrawled in his familiar, bold handwriting. Her hands trembled violently as she picked it up, unfolding it with agonizing slowness. The note was short, concise, scrawled quickly. They came fast. I tried to help others. Go north, the hills. Safe? If you get this, know I love you. Always. Leo. The words blurred through her tears, hot and stinging. He was gone. He had tried to help. That was Leo. Always brave, always kind. The wave of grief was a physical blow, almost doubling her over, but it was accompanied by a strange, fierce pride. He hadn't been afraid. He had faced it, not with terror, but with compassion. And he had left her a path, a hope. Go north, the hills, safe? The question mark resonated with the uncertainty of this new world, but the direction was clear. Ilara clutched the note to her chest, her gaze sweeping the empty office, then out at the silent, sprawling city, now swallowed by the night. The blood-orange glow had faded, replaced by the indifferent, cold light of the moon, casting long, stark shadows. She had lost everything, but in the heart of that loss, she found a flicker of purpose. The world had ended, yes, but Leo's love, his final act of care, was a thread connecting her to a future, however uncertain. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about carrying his hope, his memory, into whatever tomorrow might bring. His sacrifice, his final message, was a testament to the enduring power of human connection, a silent plea to cherish the bonds we share. For in the blink of an eye, all that we hold dear can be swept away, leaving only the strength of our spirit and the echoes of love to guide us through the darkness.